Hey everybody, welcome to the 1947 Operators Podcast. In order to increase the rate of technology innovation in India, we need to increase the number of operator angels in India. Hence, we are launching the 1947 Operators. 1947 Operators is a podcast that unpacks the investing journey of the best operator angels in India. We will be covering areas like what drove them into angel investing, what's their investing process like, how do they source deals, pick deals, and win deals, how do they evaluate founders and the market size, what value do they bring to the cap table. We're hoping the 1947 Operators podcast will help more operators start their angel investing journey. As a result, we will see an increase in the number of operator angels in the startup ecosystem. We had one of the most fascinating founder that I know in India, which is Mati Giglio. Mati is from Italy, but she has moved to India to start a company in healthcare, and it's called Even. They are on a mission to build a new kind of health cover, one that puts doctors and patients first, not insurers. In this episode, we covered topics like what drove Mati into angel investing, the importance of having operator angels on the cap table, the value that Mati brings to the table, the keys to hiring, importance of mental health, and much more. All right, let's roll this. All right. I am super excited to have Mati Giglio on 1947 Operators Podcast. Mati, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Shiva. I'm absolutely excited to be here and amazing pronunciation of my name, which is quite hard normally. So, yeah, great to be here.
As said earlier, it was one of the easiest surnames I've ever heard of. But we'll dive right into it, Mati. What drove you into angel investing, and what was your first angel investment?
Cool. So I guess my background is so quite diverse in a way. So I started as an entrepreneur. So I did my first company between kind of the UK and the US. Then I worked in VC in London in a fund that basically does primarily seed and Series A investments. And that's where I really started to angel invest. So it was about 2 years ago now. It's been quite a ride. So far I've done about 32, 33 angel investments so far. Yeah, it started because kind of organically, really. So I would come across companies that, maybe were outside the fund scope and which I thought were amazing, like maybe because of geography or sectors. So I started investing in those types of companies. Then, obviously, friends of mine were starting companies as well. I had a very good, I think, network in both in Europe, so Italy and the UK, and also in the US. So they would just reach out, and that's how I started. Really, in a way, because of kind of I can think of three reasons really. So the first one is obviously because help is important, right? Like for me, having like operators and founders on my cap table, both in my first company and now with Even, has been like super valuable. And I think in a way, I hope I can be valuable to other founders just because I've been there and I've done the same type of journey. And the second reason is because obviously, I would be lying if I'd said that I'm not very competitive. So I love, putting money into something and getting more money out, as well as like getting into very competitive deals. And then obviously, finally, because there are some things that I really care about, like some causes that I really care about, and it's part of giving back to the community. I've been super lucky, so I want to kind of do the same. So those are kind of the three main reasons why I got into angel investing. And yes, it's very fun as well. It's very fun.
I think you picked up a very important point. The first reason you said, it's so valuable to have operator angels on your cap table.
Yeah.
And you've been running a company yourself. Maybe Mati, we can talk about in two parts. First, your first believer in even, and one or two investors that have invested in you and they have really helped you, helped companies, move the needle forward.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, right? So, the first bit was
Your first believer in even.
yes, my first believer, sorry. So I think in a way it's easier to point towards investors, right? Like we are super lucky at even we have some of the best investors in the world in our cap table, from Khosla Ventures to Funders Fund, we're the first investment in India Funders Fund. So obviously these people really, really help you, and having them as first believers is amazing, right? But in a way, for us, I think the most important thing was having the team. Why I'm saying this? Because actually, I think that we were able to get those investors because we had an insane team even before we raised, right?
Yeah.
So just to give you a couple of examples of really the first believers. So there is a woman called Ronak, and she is the head of risk for us. And she was the head of risk at two standalone health insurers already in India. So she has an amazing track record, and she decided to join us before we even raised money. And she was obviously incredibly instrumental in us being able to close the seed round in the way that we did, right? So I guess the team, in terms of the first believers, is maybe even more important in a way than what you can get from outside investors. And to come to your second question, which was, if I'm correct, who were the investors that helped the most and how did they help? So I think we can break it down into two parts, really. So the first one is what are actually investors helpful with, right?
Yeah.
So I guess there are various things that they can help with. One is capital, one is hiring. Hiring is very helpful, to be honest. And the third one is operational expertise and like suggestions, advice that they can give you, right? So in a way, you've got the big guys, let's call it this way. So, Funders Fund, Khosla, helping you raise money. Why? Because obviously they have that capital, which is super helpful, and because they attract other investors as well, right? Like, let's be totally transparent about that. And the second type, obviously, they also help you like operationally and with hiring, right? So they have helped us massively in terms of doing the last, let's say, for example, the last call and the last interview with one of the candidates.
Mhm.
But I guess the second bunch of people that can actually help you in terms of investors are operators, right? So to give you an example, we are both, me and you, Shiva, investors in Vetic, which is Gaurav's company. And
Mhm.
he is amazing in the sense that he's also an investor in Even. So we have we have reciprocated, let's say
Yeah.
this way. And he's awesome, right? Like he has scaled like pristine care sales team. So he's been very instrumental in getting into the nitty gritty of how to set up a sales team, what the incentives you need to put, what type of person you need to hire, etc. So I guess like on the one hand is like capital and hiring and that kind of track record that helps you do that,
Mhm.
and simultaneously like operators can help you really like building the company in a way.
Yeah, and I love it actually. So as we were discussing earlier, similar story to yours. So I had Rohit Eme on the podcast the other day, and the founder of Off Business, Ashish, he invested, or he was the reason why Rohit Eme took capital from Matrix, and then few years down the road, Rohit ended up investing in Off Business, which is of course $1 billion company, and how it all comes together. And Mati, maybe we can talk about few of your investments, the stories behind it, and we can also talk about few of the learnings that you have gotten from your misses, the companies you had the chance to invest in, but you end up not pulling the trigger. But later on, those companies went on to become or do great things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, there are so many examples, right? Like, I think in terms of misses that you just mentioned, the one that always comes to mind is First Base. So First Base is a company that provides basically equipment for remote workers, right? And I met him when he was raising his pre-seed. I'm not gonna like disclose obviously the valuation, but it was much better than the one that they have now for sure. And then the guy, went on raise like Series A and B from A16Z, and amazing things happened to him, right? And that's the one that always comes to mind. And the misses, the regrets are always those that like just you can't stop thinking about. But obviously I'm super happy for him. And obviously they teach you a lot, right? For example, you maybe don't have to have such a differentiated product when you're entering a market, and when you have the first mover advantage into a market that is just exploding, right? So obviously timing is everything. That was a bit before COVID, so he was very like visionary in a way, in thinking remote settings are going to be very important even before COVID. Maybe I wasn't that visionary in terms of like seeing that track. And it's amazing, and obviously it's doing great things. And in terms of like good stuff, maybe my biggest in terms of numerical success has been a company that I can't say the name because actually they've done the round like 3 or 4 weeks ago now. But I invested in the pre-seed, and I got basically 3 times the money that I invested in total in every single company I invested in. So just with the exit of that particular investment. And that was actually an Indian founder, but the company is based in Singapore. That's kind of the biggest success. But besides like monetary and misses and everything, I guess the most interesting thing is when you enter a new market, or at least for me, right? Like I'm quite unique in the sense that I've been super lucky to live and work in so many different places. So I lived in Italy, obviously I'm Italian originally, moved to the UK, spent a lot of time there, then moved to the US, now I'm in India. And obviously whenever you enter a new market, it's so interesting to just get to know entrepreneurs, see how the market works, because obviously you are an outsider in a way, right? And you need to really quickly grasp how everything works. And that's one of the main ways in which I do it. And every single geography has a complete different like ecosystem, and how things work are really, really different. And so this is a very easy way. And at the same time, you can offer these founders, let's say, help on international expansion, right? So what I do all the time is like, somebody in India wants to expand to the US or wants to expand to the UK, I can help them with everything, right? Because I've established companies in so many different places, I can help them open up a subsidiary in the US, right? I can help them with hiring the first head of sales because I have a good network. I can help them with marketing and growth in different markets is completely different. Investor introductions because I've been in so many places and I raised in so many countries that I have good networks. And so that's the key kind of learning for me in a way, is just learning from different founders and then getting it all together and try and help them in every way I can.
Yeah, we'll go back to your, the point that you had mentioned, the second one, where you said, I enjoy being competitive, getting into companies that are highly contested. One thing that I can tell, one unique value proposition that you bring to the table is having lived and worked in different markets. You have network and you understand those markets really well. So you can, as you just mentioned, how you're able to help founders expand into different geographies. But would love for you to double quick. What's your pitch to founders? Hey, this is who I am, and this is why you should be taking my capital. This is how I'm going to help you.
Yeah, no, I think this is key, right? And in a way, I started with a very I would just deploy my own cash, which was extremely limited, right? So actually, like entering in very competitive deals when you are trying to get space for 5K is much easier than when you're trying to get into a deal as a scout, right? So right now, obviously, I'm a scout for like some VCs as well as like some family offices. So I deploy much more money than I used to, right? So the pitch has changed entirely between like deploying 5K to deploying like $500,000, right? That's when you really need space and when you really need to like sell yourself deeply. So in terms of like how I pitch myself, I think first, and I'm really like honestly saying this, I think there are very few people that are 100% brutally honest and transparent, right? Like this is who I am, and I think I am even yeah, brutal in a way, in the sense that, you know, I tell you immediately what I think is right, wrong, and yeah, try and help you in every way I can. I'm very transparent on all the kind of mistakes that I made as a founder, as a two times founder, so two times the mistakes that everybody else would make so one time. And in terms of like how I pitch myself, I think like one is help with fundraising. So as I mentioned, obviously
Yeah.
we're super lucky to be backed by some of the best people around, right? In India, from yourself, to many other funds in the US, from Funders Fund, Khosla. So I can, I guess, Loki Groom as well is an amazing investor of ours. So I can, you know, try and connect them to some of the best investors in the world, which is really my pleasure in a way. The second thing that I can help with, again, is like international expansion, as I was saying, that is quite unique. The third one, and I think is really, really important, is hiring, right? So obviously, I have hired in different markets as well, and I have hired, like we have hired as teams, right? So as you know, I've got two co-founders in this company. I had one co-founder in my previous company, which is the same, so Mayank. And so I guess like our experience has been that we've been always able to hire the best talent even before we had money. So in our first company, we were literally like 23-year-old with zero experience on fundraising, building a business, etc. But we ended up hiring, for example, the ex-managing director of the Times for a journalism startup, right? Which was the first one.
Yeah.
In this one, we hired Ronak, we hired Animesh, who was the head of healthcare operation at Narayana Healthcare. So before we had money. So how do you build an insane team when you can offer very, very little? That's also, I think, my skill set and how I can help you figure it out. And alongside hiring is how do you structure ESOPs, right? So very few founders, I think, especially first-time founders, really understand the importance of ESOPs and like what is the right amount that you should give to everybody in the team, right? Depending on when they join you, who they are, what stage of the company, what type of valuation you have, how does that like changes over time, etc. So that's like something I kind of obsessed with and I really, really love figuring out. And I think most founders just have not had the experience to do that, right? Unless they are second-time founders. And then I guess the last one is growth. So I have, you know, skilled and growth companies, again, in different markets. I love consumer. So I actually lead growth and revenue here at Even. And so I love to help founders in figuring out, you know, different channels, sales, like do you do sales or product-led growth and every type of thing related to that. Plus, again, I'm very flexible because I'm an angel. I'm a scout, but the most important thing for me is getting into deals. I'm flexible with like the check size, so that's helpful again. And you know, I'm a woman. There aren't many women around. This is terrible, but you know, like I try and help. You know, I also diversify the cap table a bit. This is again something that not many people will admit, but it is helpful sometimes to be a woman, and that's like one of the ways in which it can be helpful rather than being a problem, right? There are a lot of problems with angel investments for women and just finance in general, but it can also be like a strength if used correctly, I think.
I think to me, it seems like one of your superpowers is hiring. And why I say that is, Gaurav again is a mutual friend of ours, and we both are investors in Gaurav's new company, Vetic. I came to know from Gaurav that, you tried hiring Gaurav.
Oh
And
man.
at the beginning of the conversation, you said, even before we went on to raise funds for Even, I hired, I forget the name, a superstar in risk management. What's your process for hiring?
Oh well, this we could have a conversation of 3 hours here, I guess. It entirely depends on the stage that you're at and the level of these people that you're trying to hire, right? Like even for junior, it's very hard to find amazing junior talent, especially generalists. So I have like an entire like strategy on that. Um, but let's focus on maybe the things that are common, right? So I think one of the things that for me are most important is generosity. So I think also when I'm looking at a founder, right? Obviously, everybody looks for a founder that is super ambitious, that knows how to sell, that like is a domain expert, and that has done it all before. Maybe a second-time founder, etc., etc. Obviously, I look for that as well, right? But one of the things I look for, and I think not many people do, is how do they structure their ESOPs, right?
Yeah.
And how generous they are.
Yeah.
Okay. So the majority of the founders will come up with an ESOP of like, I don't know, 5%. And that ESOP of 5% of that company is basically the amount of their own companies that they're willing to give to the team, right? To their
Mhm.
own team. I think that's very, very little. At even we have, 3 times that. And we are at seed, like on actually, we raise more money, but parentheses, this is
Mhm.
non-disclosed yet next
Yeah.
week. Um, but basically, like, this is one of the most important things. So how do you hire the best talent when you have zero money is put yourself in their own shoes, right? So imagine that you've been pitched by somebody that is obviously obsessed with this problem and potentially is quite talented, hopefully,
Mhm.
and smart,
Mhm.
but they have nothing, right? They have absolutely nothing. So how would you be convinced if you were them?
Yeah.
And it goes down to very basic human needs, right? Number one, try and establish a like deep personal relationship with this person, right? Like spend time with them, try and understand what motivates them, try and create a relationship with them, their families. Obviously in different countries it's also different, right? For
Yeah.
example, in India it's really important to establish a relationship not only with that particular candidate but also with their families.
Mhm.
Maybe in the US is a bit less,
Yeah.
right? Be very generous with your time, fly out, be relentless in the
Mhm.
sense that obviously the first answer was going to be a no. That goes without saying, right? If
Mhm.
the first answer is a no and you're like, okay, cool, thank you so much, bye, you are never going to hire the best talent, right? Just
Mhm.
be relentless and just go there, ask them, keep asking, keep posturing them. Gaurav knows. I have tried and poached him for probably 6 months, right? And by the end, we became friends, and now we are investors in each other companies, and it's kind of still develop the relationship. But the second thing is being extremely generous, right? You
Mhm.
can't expect somebody amazing to come join your company if it's not also their company, right? So be very generous in terms of the equity that you give to people. And I think that's like crucial, but I see so many making this mistake, right? To build a suboptimal team of not star players just because they want to save a little bit of equity. But the whole
Mhm.
point is much better to have a small part of an amazing rocket ship than have everything of something that is collapsing and is very small, right? And there is no way that you're gonna build a rocket ship without a star team. So this is the only thing that you need to do.
Love the framework. I'm going to put out a snippet on this specific topic so others can learn from it. Mati, you've been, I think you founded a company previously. You've been or you've worked, lived in different geographies. You work in venture capital. Now, again, you are a founder, and you've created your own frameworks of how to source deals, evaluate deals, close deals. There's a lot of folks in the Indian ecosystem. They are getting some liquidity, or they will be getting some liquidity very soon, and their friends, their coworkers, are leaving and starting companies. If they were to start angel investing, what advice would you give them? What's like a playbook or a process that they can follow?
Oh, it's a very good question. So I don't think that unfortunately there is a playbook, right? I think the more I grow and the more like I have experiences, the more I realize that actually whatever you do, as long as it's quite unique, it will work, right?
Yeah.
Like Sometimes you do things like, for example, for me, like moving to India 2 years ago, right? And the people are like, you are just crazy. But then it turns out like being one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, right? And this is the same for how to start angel investing. In a way, don't look for playbooks, right? Like don't look for stuff that has worked for other people. The first and most important thing is just start somewhere, right? Start talking to founders, start advising some founders, start investing. Just put a little bit, obviously not the entirety of your capital, into angel investing, and just start playing with it, right? Start doing something, because obviously it's from your mistakes that you will learn what to do next. And the more founders you meet and the more founders you invest in, the more founders will refer you, their friends, and things like that. So that's how I started, right? You start investing in 2, 3 companies, you're helpful, they introduce you to others, and this is how it works. Then you start maybe getting in touch with some of the best funds. So I try and co-invest with the investors that invested in my companies, because I know them, because they're amazing, and so you start like having that kind of flywheel that at some point will leave you with a very solid deal flow. But at the beginning, obviously, nobody has it. So just start. In fact, my biggest regret is to have started maybe a bit too late.
Yeah.
We had an amazing run in terms of valuations and stuff, yeah, maybe I should have started a little bit earlier, but I'm still very young as well, so it would have been a bit difficult. But just start somewhere, yeah, things will just come your way. I think don't be too afraid of mistakes, because they don't really matter. The only thing that matters are the wins, right, in angel investing. So don't worry too much.
So you said, one of the best decisions for you was moving to India. We'll double click on that. And when you initially had moved to India, what was your first thought in mind about India?
So I'll be honest, right? Again, because I'm always brutally honest. So people in the West, I think, sometimes make the mistake of thinking that India is just kind of catching up with the West, right? Like India is catching up. At some point, it will catch up and things like that. Actually, as soon as you move here, you realize that India is just on a completely different track altogether, right? They are taking a massive shortcut that will, I think, allow India to just overcome the West in so many ways. If you think about it, with payments, right? UPI, a better infrastructure than the one that is in the US, right? The national health stack, which is impacting healthcare, which is the domain that I operate in, massive innovation, right? So I guess for somebody like me, an entrepreneur, the most exciting thing about India is that, firstly, obviously, is massively growing, is, I think, taking a shortcut for the West in so many different areas. But more importantly, is that there is very low market penetration for so many essential products. If you think about it, there is like 4% market penetration for health insurance, which is kind of the sector that I operate in. There is about, I think, 3% penetration, like 2% of people in India have access to financial markets, right? So these are such like huge problems. And in a way, you see the market, you see these huge problems, and you look at China, right? You have Alibaba, Tencent. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, and this is the reason why I'm here, there are going to be companies as big as Alibaba and Tencent, but not in gaming and advertising, but in very essential domains, right? So in health,
healthcare,
finance. And this is like why this is so exciting, right? Why I'm here. I could have been anywhere, but I'm here because I think we can build something of the scale of Alibaba, but in healthcare. What's better than that, right?
Yeah. Marty, what inspires you?
Good question. I think I really like winning. That's very important to me, and this is why I'm very competitive even in other domains, not only in work. Like in sports, I'm very competitive, for example. So I love winning. I love big challenges, and I love big challenges and winning with the team that I've picked, right, and my co-founders have picked, because I think they're just the best. And doing it with people that you care about, and having also winning, right? What does it actually mean? Like winning is not obviously is about like yourself winning, but it's also about getting giving that opportunity to win together to a handpick kind of group of people that you've chosen in the first place, right? So winning together is also very important, and doing it in a again in a kind of domain that is so crucial is also very very cool, right? So doing it in healthcare, helping people, that's all great.
Yeah, it's a lot, as you said, like you love sports, and it seems like you see entrepreneurship similar to being an athlete, right? And you want the entire team to win together, and you want to do that in a domain which is impactful, right?
Exactly that.
Um, Mati, we'll switch gears here. If money and attention is not needed anymore for the time being, even health is not in the picture, what would you work on?
Look, honestly, I would 100% do a fund. So I think there are two passions of mine, right? One, actually, the passion of mine is to build something from scratch,
Yeah.
right? So being a company now is a company because I found a domain that I think is very impactful, because I'm working with some of the best people, because I think the opportunity is really, really large. But if that was not the case, I would probably do my own fund. I would invest in founders that are working in areas that I really care about and I think are really impactful, and I can create massive companies. And I think I can be helpful. So it's also very good to actually work on something that you think you could be good at, right? There is no point in working on something that you can't be the best at. And that challenge is also very exciting, right? So definitely 100% a fund, probably like not geography specific, sorry, but very broad, early stage, because that's where I've been, that's where my experience is at, and I think that's the most exciting part of a company's journey, at least for me. Like pre-seed, seed, Series A, that's my sweet spot. I love it.
Got it. And so my friend Alfonso has been bugging me.
Yeah.
Every podcast he gets to ask one question. So he
Very
asked me to
scared.
ask you. Sorry, come again.
Very scared.
Oh no, he's nice. He looks scary, but he's nice. So he's asking Mati, who are you outside of work? We know you because of you're an entrepreneur, you're an investor. What do your friends know you for?
Man, I think right now what I am outside of work is just very deeply boring. So I'll explain. So I think for me, especially in the last years, have become super apparent that healthcare, intended as mental health, physical health, is literally the number one priority, right? If you don't have health, everything you've built, being your company, being your angel investments, being your friends, being your family, being your boyfriend, everything will go away, right? And there
Mhm.
is nothing like that, because if my friends leave me, I still have my boyfriend, my company. If my company collapses, I still have my angel investments, etc. But like healthcare is that like real basis of well-being, and that basis that allows you to actually be much more, right? So I have become like really, really strict on how I live. So, I exercise every day, doesn't matter what happens, like I always find time for that. I try and sleep, 7, 8 hours a night. Uh,
Mhm.
and I try and spend time with the people that I really love, right? Being my friends that are super important to me, being my co founders, being my boyfriend. And I completely disregard anything that sucks time that is not this. So, for example, I never go to networking events. If somebody invites me to like a 7 p.m., 8 p.m. dinner,
Yeah.
I like try with everything I have to not go there, because my free time is for social activities, is only for those like 10, 15 people that I really love. And I
Mhm.
don't want to be late, and I don't want to drink, and I tomorrow don't want to feel shit. So
Mhm.
basically I avoid all of this. So this is yeah, this is who I am outside of work. Somebody probably very, very boring, but I feel good. So that's good for me.
Love it, Mati. You are one of the most fascinating founder, I would say, given the the fact that you're from Italy, you've moved to India and building a very exciting company in a domain which is very impactful. And I really appreciate you for doing that. And I'm very excited about you, the team, and the company even moving forward. And I had a lot of fun having you on the podcast. Thanks a lot for doing it, coming on and just walking us through your journey of company building and investing.
No, absolutely, Shiva. Thank you so much for having me. I am honestly also super excited to have you as well as an investor. It's amazing and as a friend. So, no, thank you so much.